So today we're talking about plant responses as we end this unit, this section of this unit. So I want to start it with a video that shows you what we're going to be studying. Last class I did the lecture part first and then the video, but I think it will make more sense if I show the video first. So this is plant responses to their environment.
The unfurling of a flower as a day breaks, or the snap of a Venus flytrap shutting. Occasionally, plants can respond very quickly to a stimulus. But most responses in plants are far too slow to see in real time. These responses are controlled by growth.
Guess what hormone?
Growth responses
Auxin,
are constantly
yes.
at work, directing plants towards or away from a stimulus to seek out the best conditions. They're called tropisms.
So tropism is what we're studying today, the plant's responses.
The most crucial plant tropisms are to light, gravity, and water. Responses to light are called phototropism. Responses to gravity are geotropism.
In our text it's called gravitropism for
And
gravity.
responses to water are hydrotropism. Growth responses are either positive or negative, towards or against the stimulus. For example, when this seed germinates, the shoot will always grow towards light and upwards against gravity.
So it's growing with the light, so positive, and against gravity, so negative.
Whilst the roots always grow down into the soil and towards water.
So that's positive gravitropism because it's going with gravity and also towards water.
But how do plants control these growth responses? The answer is a plant hormone made at the tips of stems and roots. Auxin. The amount of auxin can be affected by external conditions, and it encourages growth. For instance, because light falls unevenly on this stem, more auxin accumulates on the shaded side, causing it to grow faster. The result is a stem that bends towards the light. Knowing the effects of plant hormones means we can use them for our own benefit. Auxins are used in rooting powder to stimulate root growth.
We call
in
rooting
plant
powder potting soil, just so you know.
and increase fruit yields. For all plants, tropisms provide a critical response system, allowing them to seek out the best conditions for survival.
Okay, so I wanted you to see that because that's what we're covering. And that also answers your first question, man. Why do plant stems grow up and roots grow down? The stems are growing towards the light, so that's called positive phototropism. And what about the roots growing down? Negative phototropism. Now what about gravitropism in response to gravity? The shoot is showing negative gravitropism, but the roots are showing positive gravitropism. Yes. Okay, so responses to gravity. Anything, again, tropism just is talking about a plant's response. So preceding it with gravitropism means that we're talking about a plant's response to gravity. So growth response in the force as a result of the force of gravity. Shoots are negatively gravitropic. Roots are positively gravitropic. So going against it and going with it. It mentions here statoliths. You don't need to know this part, but I will tell you this is one of another parallels between plants and animals. You and I have statoliths in our ear that tell our brain which direction we're moving. It's like you're moving forward linearly, or you're spinning. The fact that we have those exact same structures as these plants that tell us in which direction we're going is a parallel that we share with plants. So plants and animals both have the same structures that give us that information on direction. Now, real quick question before I move to the next slide. So if my roots are growing positively gravitropic and negatively phototropic, and they come intact with a rock, so it's growing and it hits a rock, what's the root going to do? The root will, for a short time, change directions and go horizontally until when? It can go down again. So they move in response to what's around them, and we're gonna see that on the next one. I just wanted you to answer me before I give you the answer. Here, and this is talking about the statoliths, which you don't need to know, but I do want you to be familiar with this structure outside of the root tip. What is that structure called again? It protects the root tip? Root cap. This root cap does not have mitotic cells or stem cells. It's serving to protect it. So it would come in contact with the rock first, or whatever physical barrier is there, and it would send the message, okay, now we're going to turn. So this part right here, the root cap, is protecting the delicate root tip. And what process is going on right here to help this organism grow? Mitosis, yes. Okay. So roots encounter rocks as they grow down. As they grow down, they're supposed to be positively gravitropic. But when they come in contact with a rock, the fact that they need to move around the rock at that point will supersede the need. And someone asked last class, so let me make sure you understand. Do you know what supersede means? Supersede means like it overpowers it. Like, for example, you and I have a part of our brain that tells us to breathe. But if I want to hold my breath, my cortex, the very outside of my brain, can tell me, I know you're supposed to be breathing, but you're going to stop. So my brain at that point superseded my medulla oblongata. So it overpowered it. A root is supposed to be growing positively gravitropic. When it hits that rock, the need to go around it supersedes the need to go down with gravity. So it goes around it. And it mentions that here. These responses, of course, they're time-lapse there, so they look super fast in the video, but in reality, they're pretty slow. If a plant is going to move fast, it's not going to go through mitosis, it's going to use water. And that's what we've been talking about, and some of you talked about those leaves that folded up. So I'm going to show you that on the next slide. But if it's a fast plant response, which is still not very fast, but if it's a fast plant response, it's not because of mitosis, it's because of water. And I'm going to show you an example here, using the leaves that you guys had found initially. So here it shows you all these plant cells, and they're evenly distributed as far as water content is concerned. But when I touch this leaf, any of those leaves, what is that whole whirl going to do? We've talked about it. It's going to fold up. It's going to fold up. Is it mitosis that's going to make it fold up, though? No. It literally is going to take water. So if the stimulus is right here, it is going to take water and put it on the side closest to the stimulus or further away from the stimulus. So if the stimulus is right here, do I want water further on the opposite side or the same side, an increase in water? Because what's an increase in water going to cause it to do? If I shift the water from one side to the other, it's going to change the shape of those cells. What is going to happen to the cells with more water? They're going to swell. What's going to happen to the cells with less water? They're going to shrink. So if my stimulus is here, which side do I want to transfer water to? And which one do I want to take it away? The one same side or opposite side? Why same side? So it'll bend this way. These cells will shrink. these will swell, and it'll cause the plant to go like this. So, and that's why I want to talk you through it. So as, wherever the stimulus is, the amount of water in these cells will increase on the same side. The amount of water on the side of the stimulus will increase. On the opposite side, it will decrease, causing it to fold, allowing it to bend in that direction. Okay? So in this case, it's saying this is some wind or touch has stimulated this plant. And as a result, it will shift water to the underside of those leaves so that it bends them upwards and these cells become smaller. Is this a permanent movement? No. And although plants consider it fast, to you and I, it's still pretty slow, yes. Any questions on tropisms? Okay, now plant responses to herbivore attacks. What does that mean? What's an herbivore attack? Somebody's trying to eat it. Whether it's an insect or an animal, okay? It could be a raccoon. It could. Okay? Yet another parallel between plants and animals. We have a dermal layer. They have a dermal layer. What's the purpose of our dermal layer? Protection. What's the purpose of their dermal layer? Protection. Okay? So naturally they have that. You and I, we secrete chemicals that are microbial agents that are naturally trying to kill bacteria. Guess what plants do? Same thing. So they're trying to deter any potential attacks. But even though we make the choices to stay away from things, sometimes we get attacked. Yes. Sometimes you get a paper cut. That's an environmental assault. Okay? I mean, I know that's what it is. Plants, same thing. A little caterpillar is going to bite onto it. Okay? Even though it does a lot of things to try to prevent that. When an herbivore attacks, we're going to talk about the steps that a plant goes through, but it tries to produce chemicals that make it taste bad. It tries to produce defensive chemicals that can be transmitted through the air to tell the other plants, I've been attacked, and you guys all need to hunker down. All right? It will also, if this leaf gets attacked, it will communicate to the rest of the plant to start to produce a toxin so that the rest of the plant is safe, and this leaf itself is the only one that was or is assaulted. Okay? Okay. Yes. Mention this. So, let me show you what's happening here. And this is using jasmonic acid, which is the chemical that they use when they're under herbivore attack. Jasmonic acid, it'll come up in the notes here in a moment, but here's the diagram. So here I have this plant, and here I have the assailant. He is a caterpillar. And he has bitten this leaf. And so at this point, the plant is saying, I've been violated. I've been assaulted. It will immediately begin to release chemicals in the leaf as a protective mechanism to try to make it taste bad. So that caterpillar's like, oh, this plant tastes bad. But it doesn't happen quick enough, so we're for sure going to lose this part of the plant. The second thing that plant does is it releases jasmonic acid that will travel through the rest of the plant to tell all of this aspect to shut down. Go ahead and start producing these chemicals in mass quantities, because if I'm first, you're next. So get ready. As part of that jasmonic acid that goes through the rest of the plant is released, it is also let out into the air to tell other organisms of that same species that I've been attacked. Why did I say of the same species? Is it going to tell the birds that it's been attacked? Because the birds don't really care. Yeah, they don't speak plant. Plants don't speak plant, right? I don't know. Plants speak, obviously, just through chemicals. Anyway, so you can see that they all have their signs out that say no herbivores allowed. Like, that's what happens. They all put up their signs and say, that's it. Ultimately, what this plant did is it said, hey, I've been violated. I will sacrifice myself, but my goal is to protect the rest of you. And it uses jasmonic acid as its chemical communicator. Why is it not using electricity? There's not electricity. There's not electricity. You and I have electricity, so we respond pretty quickly. We also have chemicals. When electricity works, we get that message quickly. When chemicals work, it's a slower process. So here we have that slow process. Now, yet another parallel. Here it talks about, it's not talking about an herbivore attack right now, it's talking about a pathogen attack. What's a pathogen? A disease-causing agent. Anything that can cause disease. So that could be a bacteria, that could be a virus, in a plant that could be a fungus. So we have a pathogen. They do exactly like we do. We have our whole white blood cells that do the attacking. They don't have white blood cells. But in the event that they've been violated by a pathogen, they have plasma membrane receptors. What's the plasma membrane again? It's the cell membrane. But remember, plants have cell walls, so it's right within that cell wall. And it has receptors on there that say, okay, we've been violated by a pathogen. We need to build up a resistance. Guess what you and I do when we've been violated by a virus? We start to try to build up resistance. We call them memory cells, so that the next time we fight it faster, but it's still the same thing. Still the same process, metabolic process occurring. It also mentions microRNAs. MicroRNAs are small pieces of RNA that literally take the pathogen's genetic material and chop it up. What happens when I take somebody's genetic material and chop it up? They're gone. Like, I'm trying to get rid of them. Are we talking about a huge pathogen? No, we're talking about a single cell or a virus. So microRNAs destroy the nucleic acids, and I need you to know that nucleic acids are genetic material. Hopefully you know that. And if you forgot you knew that, this is just a reminder. Okay? Now say that cell is completely infected. Do you remember what our cells do when it's so chaotic we can't get in control? The lysosome takes over and says, that's it, we're all gone. Plants have the same thing. They don't necessarily have a lysosome, but they release hydrolytic enzymes that will destroy that cell that's been infected, is no longer functional, or it's not functioning effectively. We're going to go ahead and induce apoptosis. We do these exact same things, you and I. You just never thought that plants did the same. Okay, so here's that same diagram. Hypersensitive responses. Hypersensitivities in you and I are called allergies. So hypersensitive responses in plants are very similar. Hypersensitivities are, you've been exposed to it one time and your body didn't like it. So it built up a memory so that the next time you get exposed to it, guess what happens? You get a whole full-flamed inflammation response. Full-fledged inflammation response. We start swelling, increase in blood flow, fever, all of that. Like our body is trying to get rid of it fast. Plants have the same thing. It says a hypersensitive response occurs when a plant recognizes a pathogen. The only reason an organism would recognize a pathogen is if it's been exposed to it before. Same with us. We only recognize it if we've been exposed to it before. One of its defense mechanisms is to increase the production of hydrogen peroxide. What do you think hydrogen peroxide would do to a plant cell? Just logically speaking. Do you think it would be beneficial or harmful? Harmful. Yes, harmful. Okay? It also mentions nitric oxide. And if you're one of my anatomy babies, nitric oxide is a sympathetic neurotransmitter. Sympathetic means fight or flight. It speeds us up. So the plant releasing nitric oxide is its way of saying fight or flight. Like we need to respond to this. So yet another plant parallel. It mentions here synthesis. Do you recall what synthesis means? To make or create. Synthesis of hydrolytic enzymes. What's hydrolytic? What's it going to do? Build up or break down? It's going to break down. These are enzymes that are supposed to function to break things down. So we've been infected by a recognizable pathogen. we have a whole immune response, less the fact the plant doesn't have an immune system, but a paralleling it in that way. Okay? So very similar to the way we would react by something that we recognize, as far as the pathogen is concerned, plants would do the same thing. A hypersensitivity in you and I is an allergy. If you are allergic to something, the very first time you're exposed to it, you have a very minimal reaction. It's the second and any subsequential times that you have this crazy inflammation. Okay? And that's what happens there with the plant as well. Do you remember how I said when the plant, if this leaf gets eaten or bit, then it will tell the rest of the plant to shut down? That's what this is. But let me dissect the word for you. The first word is systemic. If you and I have an infection in our leg, and it's just in our leg, we call that a local infection. Systemic means that that infection has spread through my entire body. So when it says systemic acquired resistance, this part of the plant has been violated, and it tells the rest of the plant, I've been violated, you guys need to go into lockdown. So the name of it actually protecting itself is SAR, or systemic acquired resistance, and that's carried out by jasmonic acid. So I've already covered this, it's just giving you the actual name for it here. Okay? And this is just at the individual level. This is not it sending it off to the other plants. Just at the individual level. And that's showing you the plant doing that for itself. So it's transporting the jasmonic acid throughout the plant so that it can get to the other aspects and it can all go into life. So that's what's happening here. That's the systemic acquired resistance. Any questions here? Okay, that's the end of that section.